Number 7 is pre-exhaustion. Pre-exhaustion basically means to fatigue a muscle with an isolation movement before going into your big heavy compound lifts. And the reason why pre-exhaustion works is because it ensures the muscle is fully engaged, and this reduces the likelihood of other stronger supporting muscles taking over during the compound lift. For example, when you're squatting, if you're on a more quad dominant squat, I recommend doing the leg extension before going into your squats, as you have strictly isolated your quads with the leg extension going into your squats. You could do this with multiple exercises and body parts. For example, you could isolate your chest with the pec fly machine before going into bench press. You could do a rope pull down before doing your big bent over row for your back. There can be some drawbacks by pre-exhausting your muscles going into your big compound lift. This basically means if you do leg extensions before squats, or pec fly before bench, or rope pull down before bent over row, because the muscles worked in those compound lifts have already been worked on, therefore they're slightly fatigued. Number 6 is using your cables. So by using the cables, it provides a full resistance through the full range of motion, unlike free weights where resistance drops at certain points of the exercise. And the reason why using cables works because it keeps your muscles activated for a longer period of time, maximizing your time under tension. For example, if you're doing dumbbell lateral raises, tension stops once it goes beneath your chest, and it's also very difficult to feel that control once you're at the top of the movement and bringing it down to your side. Whereas if you go from your dumbbell lateral raise to your cable lateral raise, you have tension throughout the whole movement of the exercise. And also, depending how you set up the cable machine, you even have tension at the bottom, which is the complete opposite to a dumbbell lateral raise. Best thing about the cables, you can literally work any muscle group on them, from your shoulders, back, chest, legs, arms. The list is honestly endless. For example, any exercise you can more or less do with a free weight or a dumbbell, you could do on the cable machine. And this doesn't include your big compound movements. My next technique is drop sets. So what a drop set is, after reaching failure with a certain weight, you want to reduce the load and carry on doing more reps with that load. And the reasons why drop sets works is because it takes your muscles beyond failure, increasing muscle fatigue and promoting hypertrophy. Drop sets are a great way to really fatigue that muscle. And you could do this whether you're using cables, free weights, dumbbells, barbells, and machines. Drop sets are very easy to do, especially on pin machines. All you have to do is just pull out the pin and just stick it into a slightly lighter weight. It can be a more tedious process if you're using a barbell or plated machines, and you would have to reduce the weight by physically taking off a plate and lightening the load that way. And drop sets may become a little bit difficult if you're using dumbbells. You don't want to be that guy hogging all the dumbbells, and what you'll do here is just use your dumbbells, immediately finish, then just use a lighter dumbbell. The great thing about drop sets are it extends your working sets and helps you push beyond failure. Keep lightening the load until you physically cannot push or pull anymore. My next technique is partial reps. Partial reps is basically doing the exercise at a limited range of motion, either at the top or the bottom of the movement. The reason why partial reps work is because it targets weak points, increases your strength at different angles, and also increases your metabolic stress. The best time to do partial reps is more or less when you've done that exercise and pushed to failure. And if you cannot get a full range of motion, take it to the bottom or the top of the movement and crank out a few partial reps. And this will really kill that muscle. Personally, I was never really a fan of partial reps, but I saw Jeff Nipper do a video and he said there are some benefits of doing partial reps. And also, I'm sure you guys know who Sam Sulek is, and he is notoriously famous for his training style, and partial reps are heavily included in his style. So it's worth trying out yourself. My next technique is eccentric reps. This basically means you're really focusing on the lowering phase of the exercise, taking about 3 to 5 seconds, controlling the descent. And the reason why it works is because the eccentric movements cause way more muscle damage, and this will promote more strength and muscle growth. I personally love doing this on the Smith machine, but I personally think the Smith machine was made for this kind of training, taking the bar to the top and really focus on your eccentric reps. As it's a fixed bar movement, you can really control your negatives and you don't have to worry about balance or anything like that. You could do this practically with any exercise other than the traditional deadlift. You can do this with the RDL, and when using this technique when training back on the cable machine, you wouldn't necessarily be doing this on the lowering phase. You will be doing this on the negative part of the movement when your arms are going above your head. And my second most important technique is training to failure. Training to failure is performing a set until you physically cannot do another rep with good form. Training to failure pushes the muscles to their absolute limit, and this ensures maximum muscle muscle fiber recruitment and promotes muscle growth. You could do this with any exercise, for example the bench press, although I wouldn't necessarily recommend this without a spotter. So bench pressing until the bar wouldn't raise anymore without assistance. So that's why you need a spotter behind you just to help you get up when you reach maximum failure. And you can most definitely train to failure on all exercises. However, some wouldn't necessarily advise doing alone, because training to failure means pushing until you cannot push no more. Since I personally started taking the majority of my exercises to failure, I saw a drastic change in my physique, so that's why I couldn't recommend this anymore. And my final technique, and arguably my most important one, and that's time over tension. And time over tension basically means extending the time your muscle is under strain and tension for each rep by slowing down the movement, especially in the eccentric phase of the rep. And the reason time under tension works is because it increases muscle fiber recruitment and promotes hypertrophy training by maximizing muscle damage and increasing metabolic stress. Time under tension is very similar to doing an eccentric rep, but it's its own technique. You do this technique on the lowering phase on a rep. Ideally, you want this rep to be as long as possible, somewhere between 3 to 5 seconds, which is a realistic amount of time. And once you get to the bottom on a push exercise, and then you'll hold it roughly for 1 second at the bottom of the movement and then press it up and repeat this process. Time under tension is essentially another way of saying controlling your weight. I see a lot of people in the gym who basically throw their weights up and drop it down with next to little control. You don't get the maximum amount of tension at the top or at the bottom of the rep. You get the most amount of tension in between. That's why you've really got to control it on the way down, because this period of the movement really puts the muscle under stress. You may not like to hear this, but by using this technique, you have to lighten your load drastically. You have to use a weight which you could really control on your eccentric reps instead of just dropping the weight and not putting your muscle under tension. This technique is definitely hit on the ego, but it's definitely worth it in the long run. Time over tension will definitely help get your muscles to get to maximum failure. And by using time under tension and training to failure, as well as these 5 other techniques, this will help you get more out of your training and also will help you break past the plateau. Let me know below which techniques you're interested in using. If not, watch this next video.